There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with Sisilia. Sisilia debuted on my channel last September. Sisilia is a friend of mine from Singapore.
Yes.
And we originally met in a cyber social media type of way on Litzy.
Yes.
And then finally met face to face when she came to Tokyo last September, and now we're meeting again. So welcome back.
Thank you. And I'm back.
She's back. And this first video, we're going to do a tipsy... Shawn is tipsy, and Sisilia is never tipsy.
Never.
She just uses cocaine. No.
Yes.
But this first video, we're going to discuss this novel, School for Love by Olivia Manning, an NYRB book. And Sisilia, you are a member of two... we'll talk more about the clubs in the second video, but you're a member of two NYRB book clubs.
Yes.
So you read this last month?
I can't remember. Was it last month?
Well,
yeah,
maybe.
I think last month. Yeah.
And you loved it?
Yes, it's basically this is for my in real life book club in Singapore.
Yeah.
And then we loved it. Yeah.
Everybody basically loved it?
Yes.
Okay. And I read it because I knew Sisilia was coming and I wanted to make a video with her about one of her recent reads. And I started reading it last Saturday and finished it this morning at about 6 a.m. So, let's talk about this book. First thing to say, Olivia Manning is a British novelist. She was born in England but grew up in Northern Ireland. Mm-hmm. And then I think in her adult life she lived... Everywhere.
I think she followed the husband, and they kept moving around Jerusalem and many parts of Europe as well.
She was born in 1908 and died in 1980. And her books are set everywhere.
Yeah.
So this one,
it's amazing.
How would you introduce this one? How would you describe the opening of this book?
The opening of this book is cold and loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
That is the two things that we feel.
The protagonist is Felix, and he's about 12 years old.
Yes.
And he's British subject. I think he was born in Britain, but his parents ended up in Iraq.
Yep.
During World War II.
Yep. So the father got killed, and then he lost the mother to typhoid.
That's right. And she has just very recently died as the story opens. And so he's orphaned. He has no siblings and no close relatives. So he has been shipped off to, is it an adoptive cousin of his father's?
Yes.
That he didn't know. And she lives in Jerusalem. So that's how the story opens. And what I thought was so powerful about the opening to this novel was we feel his loneliness so viscerally. And we feel his vulnerability as he walks into this. She's pretty elderly. How old would you say Mrs.
Bowen?
Bowen.
Miss Bowen. Miss Bowen probably like 40. I'm not sure.
Oh really? I pictured her as much older, but
really?
But I don't know. Yeah.
She's
anyway.
I don't remember. But
she's never married.
Yeah, she's a spinster.
And she has this house in Jerusalem. And one of the things that we're not going to spoil things, but one of the things, the house is really almost a character in the novel, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
And there's so many mysteries about the house. And one of the mysteries is that she has servants. And what are their names?
Is a mother and Nikki.
Yeah, and she's
the son.
Frau Lesno. Frau Lesno. And we learn, and we won't spoil it because you need to read the book, but a few chapters in, you realize that the relationship between Miss Bowen and the Frau Lesno and her son, it's not exactly what meets your eye. It's not exactly what Felix thought he was encountering. There's a real surprise quite near the opening, but we're not going to spoil that. And then that just opens up we, the reader, through Felix's eyes, because he's really naive and he's really vulnerable and you just want to hug him. And he's
Yeah.
trying to make sense of his new world, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to us.
Yeah. Well, one thing about this book is the house is basically a lodging house.
Yes.
And Miss Bowen is the hostess for the owner. And Felix, every one of us, has been Felix before. When we were younger, naive, not knowing much about, the outside world and getting to know people's character as well. Yeah, so he had to experience the hard way to understand what the actual people are out there.
And the one solace that he finds on his first day is shown on the cover. This is the perfect cover. It's the best cover for a novel in that it just shows the emotional landscape of the novel in a way.
Yeah.
Like, that's Felix. And this is
Pharaoh,
Pharaoh, the cat that Miss Bowen has, but she doesn't care at
Yeah.
all about the cat.
yeah, this what is a beautiful Persian cat, right? But she was just like, oh, okay,
She's
you can have it.
She's completely indifferent to the cat.
Yeah.
And Felix latches onto that cat, and that is his emotional mainstay.
Yeah, it's quite sad that this guy is very lonely, and he can only find friends in a cat.
One of my favorite booktubers is Doris of Aldi Books, and she's a big cat. She's not a cat lady, she's a cat person.
Cat person.
And Doris, you would love this book, and any of the others that are cat people. I'm not a cat person. I'm not an animal person. I'm not a pet person. But this part of the story really worked for me. It was so, you could just feel what he was getting by sleeping with the cat and petting the cat. I mean, it was just so tactile, so palpable.
So then, does this qualify as a cat book?
I think so.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so if you are a cat
Person.
person, then pick this book.
But I'm not a cat person, and I absolutely loved it, so you don't have to be a cat person.
I'm a dog person,
Great.
and I love this book. I give it 5 stars.
Me too.
Yeah.
So, we don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say that there are other people living in the house, and then later people are coming and going, so there's a whole cast of characters, including the Lesno mother and son. But then we meet new characters, and they are all fascinating, and we soon see, as Felix starts to figure things out, that all is not what met the eye on her, it's really effed up, it's really screwed up, and fascinatingly so. And that's a big part of the story. So it reminded me in a way of Mavis Gallant's fiction. Have you read Mavis Gallant? She's got some MYRB books. So
Yeah, I know. I got one from New York, so
And
that is going to be...
It also reminded me of one that you and I were talking about earlier. What's the Hungarian novelist?
Magda Szabo?
That's right. And the book of hers that I hated.
Door.
The Door. I hated that protagonist. But there was something about the weirdness of her that resonated with the weirdness of Miss Bowen. But here, there was something that worked more here than in that one. But that's fine. The Door is a much-loved book, which you liked.
Yeah, I mean, like the Door, I give 5 stars
Okay.
for the Door as well. But I think it's slightly different. Both are dark, but the Door is kind of heavier in a way. This is a lighter,
Very.
like a character development is stronger.
I think so, and I think it's more humane in a way because we're experiencing through this tender, vulnerable young man's experience.
Yes, yeah.
So just loved him. So there's a whole bunch more that we could say, and can you think of anything else you'd like to say?
Well, there's no spoilers, but at the end, he's turning to be, I think he's better off.
He's better off, and it follows a coming of age arc.
Yes.
And in a way that's just weird and weirdly satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Jerusalem and the time it's set right, like just days or weeks after the end of World War II.
Yes.
And so Jerusalem is kind of the expatriates who have been either stranded or hiding out in Jerusalem during the war are now not sure where they will go or whether they will stay, and that is also depicted in a way that was really... I didn't know anything about Jerusalem at this time period, but that was also very interesting for me. But mainly, this is a story of Felix, who can't understand what's going on, and you can't blame him for not understanding what's going on, because
we didn't understand what went on in our lives when we were
this
young.
was a doozy of a household, and Miss Bowen was a doozy of a pseudo-relative, and I thought it absolutely fascinating, so deeply satisfying, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
How many more times can I use absolutely in one sentence?
As many as you want.
So I am dying to read more by her. She has written 2 sets of trilogies that are collectively known as Fortunes of War. The Balkan Trilogy and the Levant Trilogy. Collectively, the Fortunes of War. They're all NYRB classics.
Yes, total of 6 books, split into 2 big ones.
2 big ones for each set? Or one for each trilogy?
One for each.
Wow.
Yeah.
So shall we read those next week?
Next week, I'm okay.
Next year, I would like to try one of... I don't want to try another one of hers that quickly, but this left a marvelous aftertaste, and the writing is just stunning. I would say there was one place where it's third person limited to point of view, and it's focalized through Felix's perspective. And there was one incident where he was visiting his tutor's office, and his tutor was interacting with some of his colleagues. And I thought that the insight that was being attributed to Felix in sizing up in a kind of a sociological way these adult men didn't ring true for a 12-year-old. Everything else in the whole novel was pitch perfect in terms of he was naive and he was slowly trying to figure stuff out, but that one page
will be just a blooper.
Just like that, But no, this was marvelous.
I just want to say that I'm glad that Felix actually found or experienced this at the early stage of his adolescence, that he could actually learn about life.
Maybe he'll be okay in the long term.
Yeah.
Hopefully it won't have warped him too much.
Yeah,
this was marvelous. Please check it out. Thanks, Cecilia.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.